Hi everyone. It is really great to be here at VALA 2018 and we're really excited about sharing our project with you. I'm Jaye and today Peter and I will be talking about how we used a capability maturity model to start building a tool to help us assess the current state of digital preservation awareness and activities at the University of Melbourne. So what we'll cover in this session today, I will talk briefly about the University of Melbourne Digital Preservation Strategy, which has provided a lot of the impetus for this work. I'll touch on capability maturity models, and in particular, the CESSDA-CDM, which is the model that we chose to build our tool. Then I'll hand over to Peter, and he will talk about how we deconstructed the model from its originally published form on a website, how the content was processed and transformed, how we went about prototyping our user interface, and then we'll wrap it up with where we're at and tell you about some of our next steps. So at the University of Melbourne, over 5 years ago now, a lot of time and energy was put into defining what needed to be done to address sustainable, long-term preservation of digital materials. So this effort, it resulted in a comprehensive digital preservation strategy. This had a high-level vision, mandate, it had key principles, all addressing what digital preservation meant in the university context. This vision document, vision mandate and principles document, it was developed then into implementation roadmaps. So these roadmaps feature tangible steps that a project team can take and then start implementing. So I was recruited in March 2016 to begin implementing the steps in this roadmap. It's involved a lot of investigatory work. Firstly, assessing the current state of digital preservation awareness, assessing the gaps, and then starting to work with key stakeholder groups to determine what ongoing digital preservation processes are required and how we best implement them. One key conclusion to date is that we recognise the need to add new capabilities to existing capabilities in a number of areas. For example, we need to add new workflows and new infrastructure for digital object curation and storage. We need to add new policies and new processes. And we need to add new skills. For example, we need digital archiving skills. We also want to enable new ways of engaging with digital content creators to grow the awareness that to make digital materials accessible, say 10, 20, 50 plus years into the future, certain actions need to be employed now to enable this. One challenge is building a case for new capabilities, new systems, new workflows, alongside existing priorities at the university. These new elements have the potential to affect staff and to affect budgets. So to build this case, we have to be prepared to negotiate and to influence, and to show with really good evidence what an essential foundation digital preservation is and why it is actually essential. In a multifaceted university environment where there's already numerous processes, some of which overlap, we are acutely aware of the need to implement a distributed digital preservation ecosystem. And we're currently in the midst of defining and structuring that ecosystem now. And this is where capability maturity models come in. Capability maturity models, they can help to define where you're at, and they can help to pave the way for where you want to get to. The stepped approach of capability maturity models, from no awareness whatsoever, all the way through to fully optimized processes, can be really useful for building business cases for digital preservation, because each level clearly shows what gaps exist, and they highlight the risks of not implementing better processes. Sometimes you can tell a really good story when the risks are clearly highlighted. depending on the goals and the strategic objectives of an organisation, and also, really importantly, on the needs of the users of the digital materials being preserved. Not every process needs to be fully optimised. A basic process may be actually adequate in some areas. Which brings me to the CESSDA-CDM. This is the Consortium of European Social Science Data Archives Capability Development Model. I have to admit, seeing this, it took me right back to my information management days when I used to have quiet rage over the amount of acronyms in this field. But, you know, it's okay, it's okay. It's not the worst I've seen. So we chose this model to build our prototype tool. It is a data service model that aims to provide guidance for setting up new, trustworthy, long-term data repository services. It is based on established digital preservation standards and frameworks, so it's very robust. Although it did come out of a project that had a specific focus on social science research data, the fundamental elements in it can still be used quite easily in other contexts. So it's a hierarchical model. The lower levels, which are the activities and the process areas, the results in them inform what happens in the requirement areas. The requirement areas, these are 3 clearly defined sections for assessing digital preservation capability. There is organisational infrastructure, so this is things like an organisation's articulated mission and scope statement, things like management oversight responsibilities, also funding, staff and resourcing. There's digital object management. This is covering the actual data acquisition and ingest processes, storage and curation of data, also discoverability and accessibility. And there's also technology, infrastructure and risk management. This involves the technology, infrastructure resilience and security resilience, and also incorporates disaster planning. So what we wanted to achieve was to take this model, which was published on a website, and use the information to build a tool that could possibly be given to different organisational units to undertake their own assessments. In a distributed organisation such as the University of Melbourne, this has potential to put the power and knowledge into the hands of the people actually tasked with managing the digital materials. We also wanted it to be an educational tool, so the requirements in this model fully demonstrate what is required to have a trustworthy long-term digital preservation service. So it's useful to have conversations around all of the elements that are involved. I'm slightly chuffed that I got the word obfuscation into a slide. That looks good. So Trevor Owens writes that the often highly technical framing of digital preservation can obfuscate the practical steps that organisations can take to better safeguard their digital assets for future access. The terminology used in digital preservation, it can sometimes be really frustratingly oblique. Sometimes it can be necessarily complex, but a flow-on from that complexity is that sometimes it can be prohibitive for practitioners approaching digital preservation for the first time. So we wanted to simplify the language of the CESSDA-CDM wherever possible for building the tool, and we aim to modify quite complex requirements into simpler versions. This is an example of our attempt to simplify things. In the finished tool, we had always planned to still include that original version, the longer version, as it was, but not as a main feature. We wanted to have it in there on request from a user for more information, perhaps as a hover over option or a pop-up. Peter will talk a little more about how we made decisions like that and thought through the prototyping of the user interface. So with this tool, we hope to extend our mantra that digital preservation is important and it's essential. But with the tool, we can now actually show what it involves, so we can start to work out what we need to do better together. Now I will hand over to Peter to tell you all about the tool building journey that we went on.
Okay, thanks, Jay. So, what I'm going to do is just take a bit of a deeper dive into the technology and the processes we used to extract information out of the model. And some of those processes are still ongoing, but this is a work in progress, but we'll show you where we are to date. So the first thing was just looking at the model and the structure of the model. Now, we use a lot of digital tools and techniques in digital scholarship at the University of Melbourne. One of our favourite tools is a whiteboard. So this is what we do to kind of get our heads around stuff. It's great. And what we wanted to do was actually take that fairly complicated model and structure and turn it into structured data. So we wanted, hopefully we wanted to be able to extract the data and be able to provide multiple outputs in multiple formats. So we wanted to be able to provide JSON, which is very good at showing nested structures of data, CSV, which is good, which is a very common standard, can be easily parsed and understood and preserved, but also create HTML outputs as in the existing CESSDA website, but also, as Jay said, we want to build a self-assessment tool which would be online. So to get the data out, well, how do we get that structured data? Well, the first thing we did is we went to CESSDA and we asked them, do you have any of the data in a structured format that we can use? Unfortunately, they didn't. They pointed us to a Google document that they were using to compile the information, but told us that the most up-to-date and current information was the current website. So that's where we sourced, was the canonical source of information that we used. So that involved firing up a web scraper. So we built some of that using some Python scripts to extract that into JSON. We used the OpenRefine. If people are aware of that, it's a great tool. I heard it described yesterday as like Excel on steroids. It can do amazing stuff, and it is actually fairly simple to use to combine fields, merge fields, make that data cleaning up and a bit more usable. Some of it we had to edit manually, and then we saved it in the CSV format, and we shared that around using Google Sheets. Now, it turned out the website was fairly complex, so we had to build a reasonably complex scraper to do this, and it was an iterative process, so we were doing lots of QA checks. Sometimes things didn't work as they were meant to. We went to do that once when we found an error where some paragraphs were being duplicated, and we went to run it again, but the website had changed. CESSDA had decided to rename themselves to merge with another entity. They are now called CESSDA-ERIC. I can't remember what that stands for, but as well as a new name, they had a new website, a new template. None of our scripts worked anymore. So this is one of the problems you come across when doing this kind of work. So in this case, we worked out whether it was better to rewrite the script or whether to just suck it up and kind of just manually make those changes. So we ended up going with the manual version. So unfortunately, that's kind of, we're at that point now where we've got the data out. But now we've got the content. As Jay said, we wanted to augment that with simplified versions of many of the concepts and text. We wanted to add in extra links to further information. So we wanted to be able to let people find when they discovered their level, the level of maturity that the model was suggesting, where they could find more information on improving that or finding out alternative sources of information. And the self-assessment user interface that we were building we really wanted to make that output as preservable and as sustainable as possible. So, I mean, you heard this morning in the keynote about one of the websites that was developed, and after 10 years, it's now, that technology's old hat. They need to refresh it and do more. So we want to kind of be in a position where this can be sustained into the future. But this morning you also heard how that underlying collection data was still valuable and was used in their collection systems. That's kind of what we wanted to do as well. We want to separate out the data, the useful bits of the model in a standard way from the presentation. So if the presentation system no longer works, you've still got that data there to continue on with. We wanted to use open formats, minimal software dependencies, use proven software, and deliver it over the web. We also want it to be as simple as possible to use. So to do this, we look to existing idioms on the web. So rather than people having to read through those quite long text descriptions of the levels of maturity, we thought probably some kind of star rating was kind of easier to implement and more understandable. So we looked to, stars are a common thing. This one's from the linked open data, 5-star rating. So this was kind of our thinking. We wanted it to be reasonably simple. And we also wanted to think about just how easy we could make it for people to use. So we looked at what was out there on the web already that was an easy to use kind of quiz-based system. And this is what we found. Which Disney princess are you based on your Harry Potter preferences? So there are all kinds of these. You've all got these quizzes on Facebook. You can go through, click, 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 get an answer. Could we actually design something that was as easy to use as this system? That was our goal. And other systems, things like Vote Compass. I don't know if you may have seen this last federal election, but you're able to put in your preferences around particular issues, and it would bring you back your results as compared to the major political parties. So it would give you kind of a ranking of where you were on the scale of different attributes of those parties. So that was kind of where we were thinking for that. So that was a good analogue for what we wanted to do with this tool. So this is where we're at the moment. So this is kind of the first attempt at creating a user interface. So in this screen, actually all the information on the left is present on the right. It's just that using dynamic HTML, it can be shown to the user at the appropriate time. So one of the problems with the existing model is, and the way it's presented, is that it's just so verbose. Like there is so much text, it's easy to get lost, to go, well, where am I? What is it? What am I doing? In this way, you can move the mouse around. It will display which level it is. You can read the full description if you want. You can actually get to all that information. It's just not everything shown to you up front when you first use it. So that's kind of where we wanted to go with that. And as we were... Initially, our view was that this would be a fairly simple tool. It would be a one-off. People could go there, get a result, end of story. They'd have their rating and they could look at further information and do stuff with that. But then we started to think about what would happen if we could collect everyone's results. That would then give us the opportunity to rank, to give people not just their capability, but they could look at where they were ranked to other people who use the tool. And also if we could get users to tell us, say for example, the size of their organisation or where they were from or which sector they were in, then that would allow you to potentially benchmark against other users in the same categories or same area. So that has, we thought that was too good an idea to pass up. So we've pushed out our timelines a bit to develop the tool, and we're currently implementing that in So unfortunately, we're still in the build phase, but just keep your eye on our Twitter feed for announcements about that, or call for beta testers. Hint, hint. Okay. So just to conclude, things we're still going to do, we're going to refine the model and put in more information. This is all being developed on GitHub in an open way, so where we'll have issues there, people can contribute, it will all be shared. We want to close the loop, providing more links for people to actually be able to take concrete actions based on their feedback from the model. We want to complete the user interface, test the tool and get more user feedback, and also potentially extend it with different models. So the tool will have the ability to plug in other models. So if we can structure it in the same way, we could potentially build another tool, or just answer, even be able to say, you're here on this model, but you're here on this model, compare things like that. And in hindsight, we could even choose a simpler model that may have been easier to implement than this enormous thing called the CESSDA model, which, might have been easier, but it's also been very powerful in terms of it has a wide coverage. It's based on other existing standards, so it's kind of almost a meta standard almost of all those different ones. So that's where we are. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter and Jaye. We've got some time for some questions from the audience, if any of you lovely folk have any. I'll just ask that you come up either to one of the microphones here, or we might have a rover running around to find you. Just introduce yourself and maybe what organisation you're from as well. So if anyone has any questions, please let us know. I was actually interested in... sure, come up. So the tool itself, will that be used to map kind of organisational capability or like individual capability, or both? Is that the end goal?
Yeah, both is the answer to that. So we're hoping that people can put in, like the size of an organisation. It could just be one person, so it might just be my personal photo archive. I'm kind of interested where I sit on that sort of thing. Yeah.
Mason. I work for ARNet, and in a previous life I was obsessed also with digital preservation, so I congratulate you on your project, and I'd really like you to, I guess, talk a little bit more, if you can, about why the language barrier is so important to break down in terms of getting buy-in for digital preservation.
I guess I could start answering that with a personal kind of reflection. I mean, coming to the field as a career changer, I found it incredibly difficult, and I had to put in a lot of, self-funded personal time to understand the concepts being described. And I just at the time, I wished that there were more avenues for, a simpler explanation that makes sense, or maybe different learning style options. So that's the first thing that came to mind when you asked that question about the terminology.
It does. I hear you, because I've got that background, and I've not managed to really have a conversation about digital preservation in the world of e-research that I work in. So my request to you is to re-pitch your paper at the e-research conference this year.
Gavin McCarthy, I work on the same floor as these two. The question, and I've come to their paper to find out what they've been doing. It's very exciting. How many people do you think are going to use the tool? I mean, what's the sort of universe of the population that you're hoping to reach? Just the numbers of people across the university.
The short answer is we don't know. The longer answer is that we'll certainly use it in the context of the digital preservation project at the university. So as Jaye sort of said, it's a good way to engage people, and hopefully we can get them to either go through the whole tool, there's about 80 questions in all, or even just focus on, say, the technical, digital object management part or storage or something like that. So it may just be we point them to their area of interest. Wider than the university, who knows? It'll be open to anyone. We'll just see what happens, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got someone at the microphone up there.
Astrid Bovell, I'm at Deakin University. Copyright is a huge difficulty for a lot of people that are involved with digitisation plans, and I'm just wondering how your tool incorporates helping people to realise that there might be copyright issues, or working out who they need to talk to, or what kind of policies and procedures they may need to consider as part of their digitisation projects.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll take on the copyright question. No, it's a great question. The tool, it doesn't provide that kind of detail on copyright. That's kind of like, in our context, the preservation project, we have a separate project running to improve the processes from digitisation through to long-term preservation, and it's kind of separate to this tool entirely. The tool is about successfully running a long-term digital preservation repository, like the actual functions of it, not the advice parts, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's another project that we're still working on as well.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thanks for the copyright question. I have a lot of trouble with that at my institution too. Anna Clatworthy from RMIT. I was wondering, who is the audience for this tool? Who do you expect to use it? Is it just your digital collections librarians? Is it all your librarians? Is it all your academics? Is it other people working within the faculties that might need to know this? Is it people, if you have like a makerspace, something like that? Who's it for?
Yeah, I suppose it's really, like when we're looking at the university, it's probably people who are directly related to the functions around digital preservation, and that turns out, as Jaye's done a lot of work engaging with all those people, is almost everyone. Although having said that, preservation should almost be invisible to some people as well, so it shouldn't be something that has to be right in your face that you're doing. But in terms of the user groups and people at the university, it's definitely people in infrastructure, it's people in the library, it's people records, it's a whole lot of groups. In terms of our audience, it kind of wasn't. For our project, it was looking at those people, but wider on, it was just really put it out there and see. We didn't sort of, but having said that, we wanted to make sure it was, again, as easy to use as possible. So really, we didn't want to exclude anyone, which is why our aim is to kind of make it as simple as possible, but also to have the depth and the detail in there to make it useful as well. Yep.
I would add one thing to that. I have a cheeky wish to take the management oversight areas and engage a higher level at the university. In our case, it's Chancellery. So I would love to set a meeting with all of the people who make the decisions around infrastructure, around governance and policy, and show them the tool and say, this is digital preservation, this is what we're working on. That's kind of my cheeky wish that I'd love to get across the line with the higher level people so that we can start building more advocacy up the top of the university.
Thank you.
We've probably got time for one more question if anyone has a burning one. Peter did want me to ask what Disney princess you would be in your little interface model.
Turns out I'm Cinderella.
Yeah. Right, that's probably a good place to leave it. Oh no, we've got a question here from Jennifer.
I also work with Jaye and Peter. I promise this is not a setup. So you're talking about making it simple for people. You're also talking about having it as a wider possible audience. How are you going to balance those two factors? Because that seems to me to be things that might sort of compete with each other.
Yeah, it certainly is, and that's what we've tried to address. It may not be possible, so we're doing the best we can. We've tried to create those much simpler versions of the questions and answers, but also link to the full information. So if if you go, actually, I don't really understand that because it's too simple, you can get to the full model. We haven't edited the model as it is in any way. We've just added those extra things to it. Yeah.
All right, and before we let Peter and Jaye go, I just would like to present you with both with some Vala speaker pins for your presentation. We appreciate your time, and thank you very much. There you go. Thanks. If you want to thank Peter and Jaye.